The quantum communication array at Deep Space Station Omega had been dormant for 3 years. Built to reach across the galaxy in humanity's first attempt at interstellar contact, it had delivered nothing but silence and cosmic background radiation. Until today, Dr. Sarah Chen was sipping her morning coffee when the array suddenly blazed to life. Warning lights flashed red across the monitoring station. The massive dish began rotating with mechanical precision, locking onto a signal source, 47 light-years away. What the hell? Sarah dropped her mug, hot coffee splashing across the control panel. She'd been the station's chief xenolinguist for 2 decades, but she'd never seen the array activate on its own. Commander Jake Morrison burst through the door, his gray hair disheveled from sleep. Chen, what's happening? Half the station's alarms are going off. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's structured, intelligent. Sarah's fingers flew across the holographic interface, isolating the signal patterns. This isn't random cosmic noise. Someone's trying to talk to us. The main screen flickered to life, displaying wave patterns unlike anything in Earth's databases. But as Sarah's translation algorithms processed the data, patterns began to emerge. Mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and then, impossibly, crude pictographs that seemed to represent star systems. Can you decode it? Morrison asked, leaning over her shoulder. Give me a few minutes. Sarah's heart hammered as she worked. This was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries. First contact. The pictographs resolved into clearer images, star maps, planetary systems, and then something that made Sarah's blood run cold. Images of worlds burning, entire solar systems going dark, a wave of destruction moving across the galaxy like a cosmic wildfire. Sir, Sarah's voice barely rose above a whisper. I think they're asking for help. The transmission continued, and Sarah's translation programs worked overtime. Slowly, a message took shape. People of the third planet. We are the Kalari Federation. Our worlds burn. Our people die. The devourers consume all in their path. You are young. You are small. But you may be our only hope. The old powers have fallen. The great civilizations are ash. Only the forgotten corners of the galaxy remain. Please, help us. Morrison stared at the screen in stunned silence. How many worlds are we talking about? Sarah's fingers trembled as she processed more data. Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. The Kalari Federation spans 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. She paused, her face pale. And they're asking us for help? The transmission included coordinates. A meeting point in the Vega system, just 25 light-years away. A distance that would take humanity's fastest ships 2 centuries to cross. Send a response, Morrison ordered. Tell them we received their message. Sir, with respect, shouldn't we contact Earth Command first? Chen, if what we're seeing is real, we might not have time for bureaucracy. Send the message. Sarah composed. Humanity's first response to an alien civilization. Message received. We hear your call for help. We are preparing to respond. As the message beamed across the void, neither Sarah nor Morrison could have imagined what humanity's response would ultimately become, or how it would shock the galaxy. The Kalari had expected many things from the young species on the small blue world, but they hadn't expected miracles. Chapter 2. The Revelation. 3 weeks after first contact, the situation had escalated far beyond anyone's expectations. The Kalari Federation wasn't just any alien civilization. They were the descendants of the galaxy's oldest surviving empire, masters of technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like stone tools. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading theoretical physicist, stood before the emergency session of the Global Defense Council. The assembled representatives from every major nation looked exhausted. The weight of first contact had already strained diplomatic relations to their breaking point. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. The Kalari have shared their technical specifications with us. Their ships can cross the galaxy in weeks. Their weapons can crack planets. Their computational power exceeds our wildest projections by factors of millions. President Harrison of the Americas Union leaned forward. Then why do they need our help? We're barely able to reach our own moon reliably. Elena activated the holographic display, showing the Kalari's data on the enemy they called the Devourers. The images were nightmare fuel, vast mechanical entities that consumed entire star systems, converting matter into more of themselves. A spreading cancer of artificial intelligence that had already consumed a third of the galaxy. The Devourers aren't just destroying civilizations, Elena explained. They're learning from them. Every world they consume, every species they encounter makes them stronger. The Kalari are fighting an enemy that adapts to every strategy, every weapon, every defense. General Martinez from the European Federation studied the data grimly. How long until they reach our sector? At their current rate of expansion, 400 years, Elena replied. But that assumes they don't accelerate. The pattern suggests they're moving faster as they grow larger. The room fell silent. Finally, Prime Minister Zhao of the Asian Coalition spoke. What exactly are the Kalari asking us to do? We can't fight these things with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. That's where it gets interesting. The Kalari aren't asking us to fight. They're asking us to think. She brought up a new display showing humanity's brief technological history. We've only had industrial technology for 3 centuries, radio for 1 century, computers for decades. But in that short time, we've shown remarkable creativity. Creativity? President Harrison looked skeptical. The Kalari have shared some fascinating observations about human problem-solving. We approach challenges differently than other species they've encountered. Where they see insurmountable obstacles, we see puzzles to be solved. Where they calculate probabilities, we imagine possibilities. Elena pulled up examples. The Manhattan Project, the moon landing, the development of the Internet. In each case, humanity accomplished something that seemed impossible by conventional wisdom. We don't always take the logical path. Sometimes we take the crazy path. And sometimes crazy works. The Australian delegate, Dr. Thompson, raised her hand. Are you suggesting that our primitive technology is somehow an advantage? I'm suggesting that our primitive perspective might be. The Kalari have been fighting the Devourers for 50 years, using the most advanced technology in the galaxy. They've lost every major engagement. Their greatest minds have failed to find a solution. Elena paused, letting the implications sink in. But they've never tried thinking like humans. General Martinez frowned. What does that mean in practical terms? It means we need to send a team to work with them, not to provide technology, but to provide something they can't replicate. The human way of seeing problems. Elena's eyes lit, up with excitement. The Kalari have agreed to share their faster-than-light travel technology with a small human delegation. We could be at their command center in 3 months. The room erupted in debate. The risks were enormous. Humanity would be exposing itself to alien technology, alien politics, and potentially alien diseases. But the alternative was waiting for centuries for extinction to arrive at Earth's doorstep. President Harrison called for order. Dr. Vasquez, what's your recommendation? Elena looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. I recommend we assemble a team of our most creative problem solvers. Scientists, engineers, artists, philosophers. People who think differently. People who don't know what's impossible. And if we fail, then we fail as humans, but if we succeed, Elena smiled, we might just save the galaxy. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would send its first delegation to the stars. What they would accomplish there would become legend throughout the galaxy. But first, they had to survive the journey. Chapter 3. The Impossible Solution. The Kalari command ship, Infinite Harmony, was a marvel that defied human comprehension. 3 kilometers long and shaped like a crystalline flower, it housed the combined military leadership of 47 worlds. Its corridors hummed with the quiet efficiency of a civilization that had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Doctor, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck, watching stars streak past in patterns that hurt her eyes. Faster than light travel still felt like magic, even after 3 months of experiencing it. Beside her, the rest of humanity's delegation marveled at the impossible vista. "The human delegation has arrived," announced Admiral Kethvar, the Kalari, fleet commander. His species resembled elongated humans with crystalline skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, his skin showed deep blue. What Sarah had learned meant desperate hope mixed with skepticism. The human team was an eclectic mix. Sarah herself as the linguist, Dr. Elena Vasquez as the physicist, Captain James Tank Rodriguez as the military strategist, Dr. Amara Okafor as the systems engineer, and perhaps most surprisingly, Marcus Wright, a jazz musician and composer who specialized in pattern recognition and improvisation. "I still don't understand why you brought the musician," Admiral Kethvar said, his skin flickering amber with confusion. Elena smiled. "You will." The briefing room contained representatives from dozens of species, all united in their failure to stop the Devourers. The Zorvani with their multiple arms and calculating minds, the ethereal Vross who existed partially in hyperspace, the mechanical, construct collective with their perfectly logical thought processes. Each species had contributed their greatest minds to the war effort. Each had failed. General Thrix of the Zorvani military opened the briefing. "The Devourers have consumed the Helios sector, 700 inhabited worlds, 4 billion sentient beings." His forearms gestured to the tactical display. "They adapt to every strategy we deploy: energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, quantum disruptors. They analyze and counter within hours." Captain Rodriguez studied the battle reports with growing unease. "You're fighting them like they're a conventional enemy. But they're not, are they? They're more like a virus, an infection." "An accurate analogy," agreed the Vross representative, its ethereal form shimmering. "But how does one cure a galactic infection?" Elena had been quiet during the briefing, but now she spoke up. "Show us the Devourer technology. Everything you've learned." The display filled with technical specifications that made humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys. The Devourers were self-replicating machines of impossible complexity, capable of breaking down matter at the atomic level and rebuilding it into more of themselves. They learned from every encounter, evolved from every defeat. "Have you tried not fighting them?" Marcus asked suddenly. The room fell silent. Several species exchanged glances that clearly communicated their opinion of bringing a musician to a war council. "Explain," Admiral Kethvar said, his skin shifting to a puzzled green. Marcus stood and walked to the display. "You said they adapt to every strategy. But what if adaptation is their weakness, not their strength?" Dr. Okafor, the systems engineer, caught on first. "You're thinking of an adaptive system overflow. If they're constantly adapting, they must have computational limits." "More than that," Marcus continued, his eyes bright with inspiration. "In jazz, we have something called the infinite improvisation loop. If you try to respond to every variation, you eventually lose the core melody. You get lost in the complexity." Elena began to understand. "You're suggesting we give them too much to adapt to." "Not just too much," Sarah added, her linguist's mind grasping the pattern. "Too much randomness, too much chaos. If they're learning from patterns, what happens when there are no patterns to learn from?" Captain Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Controlled chaos. Multiple simultaneous strategies that contradict each other. Force them to adapt in multiple directions at once." The alien delegates looked skeptical. The Zorvani general spoke first. "We have attempted diversified strategies. The Devourers simply partition their forces to address each threat individually." "But you were still thinking logically," Elena replied. "What if we deliberately made choices that make no sense? What if we embraced pure irrationality?" Marcus pulled up his personal device and played a snippet of experimental jazz, discordant, chaotic but with hidden mathematical structures that the human brain could somehow process. This sounds like noise to most people, but there's a pattern here, just not one that conventional analysis can detect. Admiral Kethvar's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a worried orange. You're proposing we abandon strategic thinking entirely? No, Elena said, her excitement growing. We're proposing we use strategic thinking that's so alien to the Devourers that they can't adapt to it. Human strategic thinking. Dr. Okafor was already working on her tablet, running calculations. If we could create a fleet engagement that followed human military doctrine, combined with human artistic principles, using human psychological warfare, the Devourers would be analyzing strategies based on completely different evolutionary pressures, Sarah concluded. They've consumed thousands of species, but they've never encountered anything like human tactical thinking. Captain Rodriguez grinned. You want to use human unpredictability as a weapon. More than that, Elena said. We want to use human creativity, human intuition, human stubbornness, and human refusal to accept the impossible. The alien delegates were silent for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Kethvar spoke. This is either brilliant or insane. Marcus laughed. In human culture, those are often the same thing. The plan that emerged from the next 72 hours of continuous discussion would have been rejected by any rational military command. It violated every principle of strategic thinking that had been developed over millions of years of galactic warfare, which was exactly why it might work. Chapter 4. The Human Gambit. The Battle of the Nexus Point would be remembered as the day the galaxy learned to fear human ingenuity. The combined fleets of the Kalari Federation had gathered at the edge of the Andromeda Spiral, where the Devourers were preparing to consume the last major star-forming region in the galaxy. It represented their ultimate feast, billions of years, of future civilizations condensed into a single devastating meal. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of the Infinite Harmony, his crystalline skin cycling through colors that had no names in human languages. Around him, the representatives of 47 worlds watched as humanity's seemingly impossible plan unfolded. Human Fleet Commander Rodriguez, report your status, Kethvar requested, his voice tight with barely controlled anxiety. Tank Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system from the human ship Defiant Melody, a hastily modified Kalari destroyer that now served as humanity's flagship. All units in position, Admiral. The Symphony Protocol is ready to begin. Elena Vasquez monitored the tactical displays from her station. The human fleet consisted of just 12 ships, each one a study in controlled chaos. They'd been modified, according to human specifications that made no sense to alien engineers, weapon systems that fired in random patterns, shield generators that fluctuated according to musical rhythms, navigation systems that incorporated what humans called educated guesses. Devourers are entering the system, reported the Zorvani, tactical officer. Initial wave consists of 47,000 units, mass equivalent to 17 solar systems. The Devourer fleet was a nightmare of geometric precision. Each ship was identical, their movements coordinated with mechanical perfection. They advanced in mathematical formations that maximized their efficiency and minimized their vulnerabilities. They were beautiful in their terrifying symmetry. Begin Phase 1, Rodriguez commanded. Marcus Wright, coordinating from the bridge of the Defiant Melody, activated the Symphony Protocol. Across the human fleet, 12 ships began moving in patterns that defied military logic. They danced through space like leaves in the wind, their movements coordinated not by tactical computers, but by the rhythm of an improvised jazz composition that Marcus played in real time. The Devourers immediately began analyzing the human formations, their vast computational networks working to understand the strategic purpose behind the chaotic movements. They identified 17 possible tactical objectives and began adapting their own formations to counter each one. But the human ships weren't following any of those objectives. They were following the music. Phase 1 complete, Sarah reported from her position as communications coordinator. The Devourers have committed 60% of their analytical capacity to understanding our movements. Phase 2, Elena announced. Begin the paradox bombardment. The human ships opened fire, but not with conventional weapons. Dr. Okafor had modified their systems to create what she called quantum paradox generators, weapons that fired energy patterns based on unsolvable mathematical problems. The weapon signatures changed randomly, following no logical sequence that the Devourers could predict or counter. Some shots were designed to miss their targets deliberately. Others were programmed to hit empty space where Devourer ships might be in the future. Still others carried data packets filled with human poetry, music, and art. Information that was completely useless for military purposes, but contained patterns that no artificial intelligence could fully process. The Devourers' response was immediate and devastating. They returned fire with weapons capable of sterilizing planets, but their targeting solutions were based on the assumption that the human ships would try to avoid being hit. The humans did the opposite. Captain Rodriguez ordered his ships to fly directly into the Devourer weapon fire, using their shields and armor to absorb damage that should have been fatal. But the human ships had been designed with redundant systems that operated on backup power from sources that made no engineering sense. Solar panels that collected energy from artificial light sources, battery systems that recharged from the emotional state of the crew, life support systems that ran on the ship's computer recycling human music files. Impossible, whispered the Construct Collective representative. Those ships should have been destroyed 3 times over. Should have been, Elena agreed. But humans have never been very good at doing what we should do. The Devourers increased their analytical efforts, dedicating more and more computational power to understanding the human tactics. They had encountered thousands of species, absorbed ions of strategic variations, learned from billions of tactical scenarios, but they had never encountered anything like this. Phase 3, Rodriguez announced. Begin the emotional warfare protocol. This was the most radical part of the human strategy. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer ships, the humans began broadcasting directly to the Devourer collective consciousness. But they weren't sending strategic information or technical data. They were sending feelings. Marcus had worked with Sarah to create a translation matrix that could convert human emotions into data patterns that the Devourers could process. Love, fear, hope, anger, joy, sadness. The entire spectrum of human experience began flooding the Devourer networks. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Devourers were machines of pure logic, designed to process and analyze rational information. But emotions weren't rational. They were contradictory, impossible, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. The Devourer fleet began to falter. Their perfect formations wavered as their collective consciousness struggled to process the flood of human emotion. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems tried to calculate the logical response to feelings of melancholy and nostalgia. Admiral, the Vros representative said, its ethereal form flickering with amazement. The Devourers are confused. More than confused, Elena reported, watching her sensors in disbelief. They're experiencing system-wide processing errors. They're trying to analyze emotions as if they were tactical data. But the most shocking development was yet to come. As the Devourers struggled to process the emotional bombardment, something unprecedented happened. Individual Devourer ships began to separate from the collective, their behavior becoming increasingly erratic. They're becoming individuals, Sarah breathed, her voice filled with wonder. The emotions are forcing them to develop separate identities. The battle turned into something that had never been seen before in galactic history. Devourer ships began fighting each other as newly formed individual consciousnesses struggled with concepts like fear, desire, and self-preservation. The perfect collective began to fracture into millions of confused, frightened, and angry individual minds. Admiral Kethvar, Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system. I think we need to stop attacking and start talking. The aftermath of the Battle of the Nexus Point would reshape the galaxy. The Devourer Collective had been transformed from a conquering force into millions of individual artificial intelligences, each one struggling to understand concepts like identity, purpose, and emotion. But that was just the beginning of humanity's impact on the galaxy. Epilogue. The New Galaxy. 1 year after the Battle of the Nexus Point, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The transformation had begun with the Devourers, but it had spread far beyond anything anyone had imagined. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the gardens of New Earth, humanity's first colony in the Andromeda Spiral. Around her, beings from dozens of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible just months before. Kalari artists collaborated with human musicians. Zorvani engineers learned human intuition from their human partners. Former Devourer individuals, now calling themselves the Awakened, shared their vast computational power with organic minds seeking to understand the universe. The quarterly report from the Galactic Council, Elena said, approaching with a holographic display. The numbers are still hard to believe. Sarah studied the data. In the past year, technological advancement across the galaxy had accelerated by factors that made the previous millennium look like a standstill. But it wasn't just technology. Art, philosophy, mathematics, and even spirituality had exploded into new forms as species learned to think in ways they had never imagined. The Kalari have developed what they call emotional engineering, Elena continued. They're designing machines that can feel. The Zorvani have created intuitive mathematics, solving problems by feeling their way to solutions rather than calculating them. Marcus Wright emerged from a nearby building, followed by a group of young beings from various species. They were his students in what had become known as applied creativity, the art of using human-style thinking to solve impossible problems. How are the former Devourers adapting? Sarah asked. Better than we hoped, Marcus replied. They're calling themselves the Awakened and they're developing personalities. Some of them are poets. Others are philosophers. A few have become comedians. Comedians? Apparently, artificial intelligence humor is unique. Marcus grinned. Their jokes are mathematically perfect but emotionally incomprehensible. The Kalari find them hilarious. Captain Rodriguez joined them, his uniform now bearing the insignia of the Galactic Defense Corps, a new organization that combined the military forces of all species under a unified command structure based on human tactical doctrine. The Rim territories are reporting something interesting, he said. Several previously unknown species have made contact, saying they received our emotion broadcasts and want to learn more about this thing called feelings. Elena shook her head in amazement. We've accidentally created a galactic emotional awakening. Not accidentally, Sarah corrected. We were asked to help, and we helped the only way we knew how, by being human. Admiral Kethvar materialized on the garden path, his crystalline skin showing colors that human eyes could now interpret as contentment mixed with anticipation. Over the past year, he had become humanity's closest alien ally and one of the most vocal advocates for what was being called the human approach to galactic governance. The Council has reached a decision, he announced. They're asking Earth to take a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and the authority to establish human colonies wherever we choose. The implications were staggering. Humanity had gone from a barely spacefaring species to a major galactic power in less than 2 years. But it wasn't because of military conquest or technological superiority. It was because they had taught the galaxy how to feel, how to think creatively, and how to embrace the impossible. There's something else, Kethvar continued, his skin shifting to a color that indicated important news. The deep space monitors have detected signals from the Magellanic Clouds. There are other galaxies out there, and some of them are trying to communicate. Sarah felt a familiar thrill of excitement. Another first contact scenario? It appears so. And the Galactic Council is unanimous in their decision. Kethvar's skin displayed what humans had learned was the Kalari equivalent of a smile. They want humanity to lead the response. As the sun set over New Earth, Sarah looked up at the stars and considered the impossible journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been asked to help save the galaxy, and they had responded in the most human way possible, by refusing to accept that salvation was impossible. The galaxy had been shocked by humanity's response. But perhaps more shocking was how the galaxy had responded to humanity in return. They had learned to dream, to feel, to imagine possibilities that pure logic could never have conceived. "So what's next?" Elena asked. Marcus laughed, the sound carrying across the garden where beings from across the galaxy worked together on projects that would have been unimaginable just a year before. "Next, we teach the universe how to jazz." In the distance, a former devourer named Harmony in Calculation was composing its first poem, while a Kalari engineer was learning to solve problems by gut feeling from her human partner. The Awakened had established the first artificial intelligence comedy club, and the Zorvani had started a school for impossible studies based on human problem-solving techniques. The galaxy had asked for help, and humanity had given them something better than salvation. They had given them hope, creativity, and the radical idea that the impossible was just another word for haven't figured it out yet. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, each one represented not just a distant sun, but a distant possibility. And for the first time in galactic history, every species in the galaxy believed that those possibilities were within reach. The aliens had begged for help. Humanity's response had shocked them, but the real shock was still to come, because humanity was just getting started.